Good afternoon, everyone. So good to see all of you. Thanks so much for being here at Grace Cathedral this afternoon. My name is Malcolm Clemens Young. I'm the Dean of the Cathedral. And we just had the most fantastic pet blessing. We're celebrating the patronal feast of San Francisco, St. Francis Day. And we had snakes, and we had lizards, and we had cats. But really, the dogs stole the show today. So we had, I think, probably I'd say 600 people came, and maybe 100 pets, maybe. That's my guess. But it's so good to see and have everybody here. Welcome to the Fall Forum season. San Francisco is home to some of the nation's most important and forward-thinking art institutions. What is their role in shaping a city that is in the process of revitalization? How are they themselves being shaped by this fast-evolving landscape? We are asking these questions in a political environment that is having a substantive effect on the role and autonomy of museums and culture. Today, I'm joined by the pre-eminent arts and civic leaders Thomas P. Campbell, Director and CEO of the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco, Alison Gass, Founding Director and Chief Curator of the Institute of Contemporary Art in San Francisco, Dr. Soyoung Lee, the Barbara Bass Bakar, Director and CEO of the Asian Art Museum, and Ned Siegel, Chief of Housing and Economic Development for San Francisco. Today, we hope this conversation will provide insights into why vibrant arts and cultural institutions are integral to hope, understanding, and urban regeneration. Thanks to all of you for joining me today. It's so good to see you. I think it might not be a bad idea just to do your own introductions. We thought it would be boring if I just went and read paragraph after paragraph. So maybe we can start with you, Ned.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. You all have made a big commitment to be inside on this beautiful day when there's so much happening in San Francisco. So thank you for being with us for a little while. I'm Ned Siegel. I'm responsible for housing and economic development. I grew up in San Francisco. My wife and I are raising 3 children here. And after spending 25 years in the private sector here, when the mayor won and I saw an opportunity to get involved, I jumped at that opportunity, realizing that as much as it'd be hard and there'd be times when the public sector might move at a different pace, that it was so important to both set a good example, to contribute everything that we could to help the city along in that revitalization that Malcolm mentioned. Among my responsibilities, I've got 18 departments that I work with, the arts and cultural institutions that happen on city land or are funded by the city, the airport, and then everything related to buildings in San Francisco, whether you're paying with a Section 8 voucher or we're doing permits or planning or appeals or other things, and then the business-related departments as well. So the short end for my job is revitalize downtown and build more housing.
Great, thank you.
Good morning, or I guess afternoon. I'm Soyoung Lee. I'm the new director, actually I should say my title, the Barbara Bass Bakar, Director and CEO of the Asian Art Museum, and I'm probably the newbie here. I am a transplant from the East Coast, forgive me. Moved this year. I love it in San Francisco. I have been in the field of Asian art and in museums for decades, and the Asian Art Museum has sort of been my North Star, and it's kind of wild that I now am here to lead this institution. And many of you, and maybe all of you here, know that both Tom and I are our institutions are kind of split personality. We're part city and part foundation private, and we both report up to Ned. So he's here in that capacity as well. I am very, very excited to be a part of this arts and culture ecosystem. I have been incredibly, what's the right word? I've been just so overwhelmed and warmed by the fact that even before I started, this community, this city has embraced the new leader of a major art institution here, and that there's so much collaboration, which is very unlike New York, which is where I'm from. And so all the more reason to be happy here, and really looking forward to leading the Asian Art Museum as the center for culture and community building for the Voices of Asian Diaspora. But as I was telling all of my supporters, this 21st century is the Asian century, so it's we're in that sweet spot here in San Francisco. So thank you again for having me.
We're very grateful for your arrival, and we were looking forward to you getting here, and we're looking forward to going to the gala, your gala in October too. So thanks very much.
You.
And you're right, the Asian Art Museums is something that San Francisco is very proud of. Yeah. Here we have some water for you.
More water.
Okay, good. Alan, you ready to go?
Yeah, absolutely.
We
Hi,
can't
everybody.
lose Tom.
I'm Allie Gass. I am the founding director and chief curator here of the Institute of Contemporary Art, which is a very different kind of institution from my colleagues. Like Soyoung, one of the things I love about the Bay Area is that it is an incredibly collaborative arts city. I am originally from the East Coast, but San Francisco really in the Bay Area really has become my professional and personal home. Like Ned, I too am raising 2 teenagers here in the Bay Area, which takes up the majority of my time when I'm not doing arts and culture in the Bay Area. I've worked at a number of institutions here. I moved here about 20 years ago to work at SF MoMA. I was the chief curator of the Curator Art Center here in the Bay Area. And then about 4 years ago, I had this extraordinary opportunity, thanks to so many incredible supporters and partners, to found a very different kind of arts organization, one that was founded with this possibility of really being nimble and responsive to the needs of the city. Unlike the incredible sort of really important civic institutions, collecting institutions like those of my colleagues, ICA San Francisco does not have a collection. It was made to sort of reimagine what the contours of an experimental, non-collecting institution that is really founded to be responsive to the needs of an evolving city, particularly one coming out of the pandemic, could be. We'll talk more about that, I'm sure, as we go along. I'm going to hand it over to Tom if he's ready. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm choking.
Yeah.
So,
I can keep talking if you need.
good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Tom Campbell. I'm the director of the Fine Art Museums. That is actually 2 institutions. One, the Young, was founded in 1895, but is now in a building that was designed by Herzog and de Meuron that is celebrating its 20th anniversary this fall. And that's where we have American, Oceanic, African, and world textiles, and modern and contemporary. And the Legion of Honor over in Lincoln Park, which opened in 1924, built by Alfred Brettel de Spreckels as a museum for European art. And that celebrated its centenary last November. Some of you might have read about the cake party we had, where we had something like 1,000 amateur cake makers making cake on the front lawn. So those are our 2 museums, and together it's a kind of a global entity, minus the strong Asian collections, which are in Soyoung's collection. And there are many donors and supporters of both museums in the audience. So thank you for your ongoing support of our museums.
Thank you very much, Tom. Ned, you talked a little bit about just being, having all these areas of responsibility. I wonder if you can talk specifically about the arts. How does that fall in terms of just like your priorities, and what do you see the role of art is in revitalizing our city?
Arts and culture are critical to our city having a soul. They're critical to bringing and to our economy in 2 different ways. One, in ways that are hard to measure, such as just making people happy and bringing people together. And the second, because they attract tourists, they give locals things to do on the weekends. I was just down at the Longest Table, this incredible event outside of City Hall, and there were people going in and out of the Asian Art Museum right across the street to the farmers market to do picnics in front of City Hall. And that it's such an important part of our city to bring people together and to attract people from all over the world to our incredible city, whether it's performing arts or the art that we can see in the museums that you all are responsible for. We think about them as important in both ways. It's funny, when I first got into this role as somebody who spent so much time in the private sector, many of the institutions wanted to make their case to us how they helped the economy. Mm-hmm. They said, we'd like to share a report we've done. We'd like to do a report and share it with you. I said, please, we don't need any justification for why arts and culture are critical to our city, both its soul and to revitalizing its economy. We just want you to do the work that drives those 2 things and let us try to keep all the other stuff, all the city stuff, at bay so that you can do the things that you're really good at. And I hope we've been effective at making that case to everybody, because I'm never going to be as good at running a museum at any of you are, but I hope if I do my job well, we can bring more tourists here from all over the world, from all over the Bay Area, that we can get kids and adults from the city to come towards our museum and to recognize all these incredible things that we have here that are probably underutilized relative to the visiting that they should receive.
You know, we've talked a little bit about the museums that are in the western parts of the city. What is your vision for the downtown areas, like the financial district, which, you know, we remember as being so alive when we were young, and which just seems like it's just not quite back to what it once was.
I'm so glad you ended with back to what it once was. That is not the goal. We have this incredible opportunity because vacancy rates in office buildings are over 30%. Because utilization of downtown is at like 40%, because even the ones that are rented, people don't go to every day. We've got 40% retail vacancy downtown. Some people look at that and say, we're toast. Well, I think we look at it and say, what an incredible opportunity to totally rethink what downtown ought to be, with a clean slate in a city that has reinvented itself for 150 years. And so we think about live, work, play, and learn in a neighborhood as the future of downtown. And that means that we need a university or many universities. It means that we need people coming back to work. It means that we need places for people to eat and drink and hang out together. And it means that people need to live there. Today, only like 10,000 people live in what we call downtown. It should be like 30,000 people. And we need people to want to go back to work, not because we wag our fingers at them, but because we make it a great place for them to want to be. And if we do all of those things, it must include incredible arts and cultural experiences. That can be a concert on a street that's closed down for that evening to give people a reason to come to work that day. It could be an installation from one of our museums that does something downtown to attract interest to what they do, so that people want to go visit them on the western part of the city. Or it could be something new, because we've created the conditions, and there is actually a lot of empty space that ought to be filled up, not just with people going to work, not just with people living in these buildings or small businesses where they can eat and drink and buy things, but also incredible arts and culture institutions.
Yeah, definitely. We have Even Song on Thursday night. It's just a beautiful cultural experience, an artistic experience as well as a religious one. And we have tons of people coming up from the financial district to come make their way and hear that men and boys choir. You know.
Make sure they go back down after.
And buy themselves something to drink or something. Yeah, thanks, Ned. We appreciate what you're doing. You know, Allie, every time that we've been together, you just like fill me with so much energy. Your energy and enthusiasm for your work is so, and every time you go, I want to hear more about it. So if you had to extend your introduction a little bit and just talk about just the model that you're working on at ICA, I would love to hear more about what makes it different and what makes it something that's so compelling for people.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's very nice of you to say. Sometimes I do get very tired, by the way.
Yeah, with the teenagers. And
the teenagers are really what does it.
And the artists too, which are the artists are wonderful.
The artists bring the energy, and the audience, and the freedom of the model is actually what brings the excitement and the energy. And it's been, we founded ICA, and we have this extraordinary board, some of whom are here in the audience, who really founded along with me with this freedom and vision that I think is kind of in an innovative identity that is baked into what San Francisco always has been. This kind of comfort with risk, comfort with new ideas, right? So ICA, we do not have a collection. We were founded kind of with this mantra of being nimble and literally this kind of language of being always under construction and being able to kind of try new things. So we opened ICA in 2022 officially in this great warehouse in the Dog Patch, and for a variety of reasons, we were offered this incredible opportunity to relocate to a building that had essentially been vacant at the corner of California and Montgomery, right in the financial district, in partnership with a real estate developer, Vornado Realty Trust, the old flagship Bank of America building, with a kind of intentional idea to be an institution that did not have a permanent home, which is very unusual, right? But something that for us was incredibly exciting. So all of a sudden, it was a great financial move for us to kind of invest in creative and ambitious artist projects, invest in culture workers' salaries. That's the kind of like behind the scenes stuff that is also important, but also to kind of be intentionally part of everything Ned is talking about, we're all talking about revitalizing downtown San Francisco through artistic culture. So it was a real game-changing move for ICA, and I think taught us a lot of different things. So our visitorship, of course, ticked up immensely because we were suddenly in a space that was incredibly visible to people who were just passing through, and I'm gonna argue a little bit and say there's so much vibrancy happening at that cross-section all the time. And we do kind of ask people as they come in, like, how did you find us? What made you come in? And it's an enormous amount of people who are walking by, coming in after work, coming in during lunch, and we're, of course, doing like little cocktails and stuff for things like that, but really kind of being this third space of, yes, people coming in and seeing art, but people coming in and kind of just hanging out. And we have a maker space that was supposed to be for kids, but turned out to also be for adults and things like that, which became really interesting. So that was very interesting for us. And what we came to understand was this is a really interesting model that is in partnership, of course, with real estate in downtown San Francisco, and in partnership as well. And I want to, say a shout out to Ned and OEWD, the Office of Economic Workforce Development, who have been really interesting partners for ICA as we think about being very intentionally an institution that doesn't have to have a permanent home, right? Soyoung and Tom and other institutions have collections that they have to steward. They have much bigger staffs that they have to find homes for and things like that. We have this opportunity to do and replicate what has been really successful for us at what's called the Cube, this Bank of America building that has all kinds of future opportunities for it for other uses. There's all kinds of other significant architectural spaces that people could come into for artistic, amazing kind of museum scale projects, third space activities. There are public sites that artists can activate that ICA has a real ability to do to kind of move nimbly and in partnership with the city, in partnership with real estate, and activate for some time, not forever, but for some time. So I think you'll see us doing stuff like that moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I just think moving from, Dog Patch when I was a child, there was just nothing there.
Dog Patch is amazing. You may see us moving around a little bit.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And to be in different places, you kind of pick up something of this culture and the spirit of those different places.
Yeah, and give people a chance to go into a place or stumble upon something in public that they wouldn't otherwise have a chance to enter into. And then we bring some vibrancy to that site that might attract a business, that people, as I always say, they come for the art, they hang out for that, but then they also, go to a gallery that's nearby, go to another museum that's nearby, go to a restaurant or a bar, and that's, I know Ned doesn't want me to track economic impact, but I'm interested in it as well.
Yeah.
I don't want you to feel you have to justify it.
Thank you.
That's the distinction. You've got better things to do than do studies to justify things that we all know in our bones are critical to having a city that we all want to be in.
Yeah, but it does feel really important that this is something ICA can do for the city. This is like I'm always kind of thinking about, like, what do we add to this ecosystem? And that's something that feels really inextricably entwined with our mission right now.
A lot of people have been talking just about how hard it is for artists to live in the Bay Area these days.
Yes.
I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that.
I mean, I think that's incredibly real,
Yeah.
right? Like the economics of being an artist and living in this city are really incredibly difficult. I think the more that we can, I spend a lot of time, I think we all do, spending a lot of time understanding that we have to deeply educate philanthropists, frankly, and a next generation of philanthropists, and why it is so deeply important to care about the arts in your city, sustain the arts in your city, because it's going to take the building of, yes, obviously housing, obviously believing that we need art schools, we need art galleries, we need art collectors, we need housing, we need people to really understand that a rich culture, and I don't mean a wealthy culture, I mean a vibrant culture, relies on the arts, and we have to have a community that can sustain the artists. And I think, caring about the arts and being able to, and if you care about the arts in our, and we're going to get into this, I'm sure, more, but in our country, that often means supporting the arts. If you're fortunate enough to have the capacity to do that.
Yeah, Tom, I wonder what you think about that exact issue.
Well, yes, no, absolutely. There's this widespread perception. I mean, there's a reality that San Francisco, of course, is a very expensive city. It's very challenging being an artist here. But there's also been this perception put about in the press that as a result of this, San Francisco is becoming a desert for artists. And actually, what we've found at the Fine Art Museums is quite the contrary. Maybe people flourish in challenging circumstances. Back in 2020, during COVID, we were thinking, what can we do to try and help support the artist establishment? And we had the idea of reviving an idea that we had actually done at the De Young many years before, of having an open invitational for Bay Area artists. And we thought we might get 200 or 300 submissions. And we had a 2-week opportunity for people to submit back in June 2020. And we got close to 12,000 submissions from 6,600 artists who were resident in the Bay Area. And we sort of selected about 800 works, and we hung them floor to ceiling, wall to wall, kind of academy style. And it was this fabulous celebration of just the creativity of the Bay Area. And we did it again in 2023. And this time we had submissions from 7,700 artists. And of course, many of them are amateurs, but it was to me just such a demonstration of just the flourishing creativity right across the Bay Area. So yes, it's challenging. Yes, we've got to find ways of supporting people, but there is this amazing bedrock of creativity here all around us.
Tom is right, and that's a very important project, incredibly important.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, during COVID, that's one of my strongest memories, you taking me through there. And, it's not just art, any art. I mean, these all are, like, connected to our homes, and you can see the values of our neighborhoods that are represented in that art. Yeah, the arts came alive. I just felt more human after that. It was such a gift. Like, there's so many terrible things that were happening at COVID, and you're just part of bringing that joy to me, really. Soyoung, we're so glad to have you in San Francisco, and we just keep thinking like you're having all your first impressions of things, and so I hope you're like writing them down before you forget. But I would love to hear your sense for just how is San Francisco and the scene here different than other places that you've been?
Thank you. And again, thank you for embracing a new person and new leader. It's just been such an easy transition, I have to say, because of people like Tom and Ali and Ned and you and places like this. I think one of the reasons or one of the attractions for moving to this city in the Bay Area is something that Ali embodies in your institution, that incredible entrepreneurial spirit here, right? Yes, Silicon Valley, but as Ali said, and as you all know, it's in the spirit of the city. And in my professional career, I've been with institutions, venerable, long-established East Coast, that, and Tomna, we worked on one of them, and we know that to change anything, it's like turning the Titanic. You might change or dinosaur. You might turn the head a little, and then it takes like a decade for the tail to come along. And those institutions are incredible. There's a tradition and legacy and the kinds of collections that are, you can't find anywhere. But I really was, I think, thirsting for a little bit more of a nimbleness, a community and an environment that really champions that kind of thinking outside the box, trying things out, the entrepreneurial spirit. And so I'm very excited to enact that at the Asian Art Museum. What I've discovered, and again, I've been in museums a long time, and for at least the last decade, maybe even 20 years ago, when museums started actually caring about who the audience was, it wasn't no longer about, I'm the authority, I'm going to put out whatever, and you come or not come, it doesn't matter. I mean, I had one when I was first starting out at the Met in New York. There was a very well-known curator, well-established, who said, people come to my show, they don't come, I don't really care. I said, how could you not care? It's all this incredible work that you put in. So 20 years ago, museums started really thinking about who are the audiences? What are we actually doing? Who are we doing it for? What do people want from museums? And it was kind of a watershed moment where people were, in these surveys, we came to understand that it was not so much education. People were putting us in the same bucket as restaurants, movie theaters, Disneyland. We can't really compete with that. So I think in trying to chase down Disneyland, we may be chasing something that is not quite, at least for collecting institutions, right? But what I've realized is that, so 2 weeks into my start, we have our first Sundays are free Sundays. Today, actually. I don't suppose anybody here needs free Sundays, but please tell your whole community. And we said, let's do a meet the new director. Lots of people came. I stood in line and everybody came up and told me why they thought the Asian Art Museum was so important to them, or what they thought that what they wished we did more, many different thoughts. But there was a core strain throughout all of those conversations. Everybody's looking for a community. And in fact, they come to museums and find hybrid communities. Sometimes you come looking for who you are, representation, which is important. But actually, the biggest joy is that you find communities that you hadn't quite realized, right? And that's what museums can provide. And we're leaning heavily into culture. So our art collection will always be there. We are responsible stewardships, but do you know that it's actually your collection? Same with Tom's, right? It belongs to the city. But people aren't necessarily coming in now for the art, right? They may not even realize what the art represents or the potential of it. But they're coming in for the food, the music, the dance, mahjong Sundays, yes, for that K-pop concert in the Asian Art Museum. And then they'll discover what we here all know, which is, why is that earliest Buddha from China so special? Or what's so fabulous about this contemporary Korean artist's reimagination of ceramics into a sculpture put together by these golds filling it in the cracks? So that's what I'm really excited for, that this city allows for all kinds of entrepreneurial spirit, but at the same time, there's also this deep understanding of how communities can be created and how we're stronger because of that. And as you said, it is through art and culture that we find the soul of the city. So I thank you.
You know, about 37% of the population of San Francisco are Asian people, people of Asian descent. And I loved your image of just like the Asian century. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about San Francisco's role in that and the Asian Art Museum's role in that.
Yes,
just
thank
like looking
you.
forward, what does the future look like?
Yes. So before we look forward, you all know even better than I the history of Asian immigration and how this country, this city, is the core of how that history started. But looking forward, yes, I think it's incredibly important that nearly 40% of the city and the Bay Area's community or population is of Asian descent, Asian American or mixed. And so that's another indication of just how embedded that Asian influence and Asian American ingenuity is. It's simply part of our current fabric of American life. It's core to global culture. So it isn't just that you go to a Thai restaurant or, sushi has been in delis and 7-Elevens forever. It's that you can go to a diner, literally, or a non-Asian inflected restaurant, and you find foods that are just such a part of you don't even think about it anymore, right? I think it's fantastic that Tom's museum has opened an incredible manga show, and that SF MoMA did the Ruth Asawa exhibit, and many museums around the country are featuring Asian and Asian American artists in particular, because, as I said, it is just part of the fabric of the global culture. And so the more the better. And I think what we can, as the Asian Art Museum, can contribute is two things. That again, we want to be the cultural destination for all of the residents, where you do not have to be Asian American to come and find that Asian inflected culture and how central it is to our lives, and how we all are actually going to shape that future, again, by finding and connecting those hybrid communities. you referred to tourism, and Ned's more optimistic than I am, but it's probably because he's actually doing the hard work, and so the administration is helping to change the speed of recovery, I hope, of international tourism. But even before they come back, Tom, I think it's true for your museum too, right? In terms of our current audience, it's what, 60, 70, maybe 80% are local, regional. So we need to be really open to our regional audience, but while we wait for the international tourists to return, we can certainly still be a global voice. And for our museum, the global voice for Asia is really important. And what does that look like? So, for example, I would love to bring sort of emerging curators from all regions of Asia, because there's so much incredible, vibrant, and very diverse artistic sort of practices and innovations happening. San Francisco is the west coast of the US, but east coast of Indo-Pacific region of Asia,
exactly.
right? So those, for example, emerging curators, all of the incredible Bay Area artists that you know so well, might they think of the Asian Art Museum as their laboratory? Can we invite the tech leaders and thought leaders who are not necessarily artists, but putting those disparate people together, a laboratory that just let things explode and see where things land. I would love that as our future.
Soyoung, if I might just point out, the mix that Soyoung just described at the museums is not sustainable. In order
not the artist emerging curators mix. You're talking about the
mix of local visitors.
Yeah.
Thank you for making sure I was clear. The mix of local visitors to tourists is not sustainable. We need more people to visit these incredible institutions. Absolutely. This is not just true of the ones on the stage here. It's true across the opera, the symphony, the ballet, the MoMA. We must. This is something that's so critical for so many parts of our city, but especially for arts and culture. And one thing that my dream is that a couple of years from now we look back and we have year-over-year growth of visitors, and it's not just because locals come back in greater force, but it's also because our international visitors really gradually improve, our national visitors dramatically improve, and that these institutions can then go out and actually endow themselves off of strong growth, that there'll be interest not just locally but globally in supporting these incredible institutions, because people have seen that so many people want to benefit from them. But the mix as it is today, it's great when we can go and there aren't that many people there for you to get in your way when you want to see something up close. But we must help these institutions by bringing more visitors to them.
Yeah, we are the fourth largest tourism market in the United States, and we definitely need that to be part of our consciousness, how we talk to each other, how we regard political changes in the national level, et cetera. Yeah, thanks, Ned. I was thinking so much about just the attendance, since COVID in all different in-person things, Tom. And I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about, where that is in the museums, in the museum world, and just what can we do about, bringing audiences to the museums.
Sure. So I think that, obviously during COVID, no one knew how quickly things would bounce back or what the long-term impacts were. And we made, at the Fine Art Museums, a lot of our peers were kind of dialing back and saying, we're going to wait and see how things work out, and then we'll start programming again. And we went the opposite way. We made a strategic decision to really lean in and come out of COVID with all, firing on all cylinders. And we've had a very, very active exhibition program, as those of you living here will know, over the last 5 years, really trying to do a broad portfolio of exhibitions, everything from kind of ancient Egypt and old masters through to contemporary. And I think we've been very successful. We've got our audience back to about 85-90% of where we were pre-COVID. And that is really because we've got loyal people in the community coming back and back and back. Where we're really being hit is in two fronts. One, an older generation during COVID got less used to coming out. And that was reinforced by all the real narrative about the sort of homelessness and petty crime and sort of the perceived dangers of the city, especially downtown. And then the other, of course, was the long-term impact on tourism, which was probably about to recover here, leisure tourism, but has now taken a second hit because of some of the steps that the current government is taking. So we're sort of 10 to 15% soft. We're going to continue really working on the local audience, but we're very keen to work with Ned and other city representatives as the city kind of repositions the narrative. And I think Ned can speak to this, but huge strides have been made in cleaning up the streets, in making the streets safer. Now we've got to get the word out. And tourism is recovering, but it's mostly business tourism. We now need to see the leisure tourism coming back. So we're doing shows that I think have international appeal, like the manga show, like the Manet Morisot show, like our Monet and Venice show next spring. But we've all got to work together to kind of promote these city activities and really make San Francisco, a place that people are really excited about coming back to. And I think there's so much upside. And in fact, there's a really exciting vibe in the city at the moment. There is the sense that things are turning around. And hopefully we can tap into especially that youth leisure tourism who will be experimental and come out, pave the way for others to follow.
One of the things I've noticed about your tenure is just your wonderful emphasis on diversity, the diversity of all human experience. And I think your work really stands out in the city, Tom, for your commitment to that. And I wonder, I just keep thinking of just, as the president makes, DEI like a bad word that we're not supposed to use, and as he talks about woke institutions, I just wonder just how you are perceiving all of that as somebody who's been such a leader and helping us to have a cultural life that's more reflective of our regular society.
Well, let's think, DEI is not actually a word.
Yeah.
It represents three
words,
really important values that are core to anything I think anybody who has any humanity aspires to. So I think that is, really critical. That term has been weaponized by the far right, but we should be proud of the work we're doing. And I, as a museum director, I want to give my visitors a diverse experience. If I can give diverse experiences, we will bring in diverse audiences. And when I think about the current situation we're in and the sort of the way that some of the executive orders that are coming out of the White House are looking to whitewash history, to simplify history, to push the complexities of the American experience under the rug. One of the things I'm most proud about is the indigenous American galleries we've just opened 3 weeks ago at the Fine Art Museums, at the Soyoung. When we opened these galleries, we've worked very closely with representatives of the local tribes, the California tribes, and one of the representatives said in the opening remarks that something like 90% of his tribe, further up in California, were eradicated between 1850 and 1860 during the gold rush. And that this is a kind of a living wound that the descendants live with. That is history. That is something we as people living in San Francisco should know. But the other side of it is that in those galleries, there's this small reed basket that was made by an Ohlone weaver. She's the only Ohlone weaver still making baskets. And it's this beautiful little thing with little red feathers from songbird feathers that she's stitched into it. And this is a small thing off the center. You might miss it when you go into those galleries. But that is a living tradition. And I think that, when we can bring experiences like that to our visitors, it expands your perception. You go away with a bigger understanding of yourself and of the world you live in and on the people around you. I mean, it's about empathy. And while empathy may be a dirty word for the far right, I think that's really one of the key things we're about.
Thank you very much, Tom. We're very grateful for your work, and I can't wait to go and see that basket. It's just my cup of tea right there. I love little things like that. All of us have been noticing just the new technologies. You were talking about this, Soyoung Lee, about artificial intelligence is one of those, and I wonder how that affects each of you in your different areas. And I would love to hear what this means for art and making art and curating art and organizing our experience of art. Like, what do all these things mean?
And business.
Yeah.
Business.
Yeah, right. We definitely have conversations among the clergy about what is responsible use of these technologies. And I would love to hear what you guys are talking about in your boardrooms.
Well, Ned's in touch with many of these guys.
Well, there are a few ways, even before you get to art, when you think about the impacts of AI on San Francisco, one is we've been a boom-bust city forever. And if we're not careful, we will be one again. And it's all of our collective work to make this a sustainable recovery, not one that is fueled by venture capital and excitement over one massive shift in our economy, rather one that we can use to jumpstart our revitalization and then make sustainable. Whether that means how we build affordable housing or the policies that we put in place for how we use AI at work or at home. There are a few different ways that we've already seen its impact. Rents are up 10% year over year in San Francisco right now. That's not sustainable. We're pricing engineers at technology companies who don't have liquidity events out of housing, let alone firemen and police officers and so on. Card swipes from Visa are also up 10% year over year. That's like twice as high as we're seeing in other parts of the country. Convention bookings are up over 40% year over year. Part of that is because we're working really hard to keep the streets clean and safe, and because the mayor will call any CEO and find out what it's going to take to win their convention if they're not watching his Instagram already, and know that this is the place to be. But a lot of this because there's a lot of investment, and the center of the AI revolution is not on the peninsula. It is in San Francisco if you look at where all the capital is. And so there are all kinds of massive opportunities that fall out of this. We've been trying to attract a university downtown, and when they said, we were talking to the Vanderbilt folks who are really close, they're raising money to put 1,500 or more kids in a 4-year institution downtown. And when we talked to them about the academic program that they were most interested in, they said, what do you want? We said, well, first of all, we want what's best for Vanderbilt. You're the educators. We're the city bureaucrats. We shouldn't decide. But if you're going to teach engineering, we also want you to teach people how to think and how to use AI and how to work in public policy at an AI company and how to market AI and what the model should and shouldn't do. And their eyes lit up because that's what excites them as educators as well. And so even before you get to how it can impact the arts, thinking about how AI is already impacting our city and the responsibility that we all have to make sure that it's sustainable, that it's responsible, that it's ethical, and that it reflects our city's values in a way that we can all be really proud of for a generation is not something that any one of us can do on our own, but something that we all really must hold ourselves accountable for doing.
Yeah. We have a really interesting thing that happens. One of the models of ICA San Francisco is that we do a lot of commissioning of new work, right? So we move quickly, we work with artists, we are really committed to responding to what are some of the most critical kind of social, political, cultural things happening in the world around us through the lens of artistic practice. So we really kind of follow the artist and understand what is happening, and really so much like what Tom said is using that to understand history through the lens of contemporary art, to understand empathy through the lens of contemporary art, but also to kind of help through artists, like, understand what is happening. And what is happening in San Francisco is AI in so many ways. We have artists who do not work traditionally in the field of technology, making work that they're interested in understanding sometimes how new technologies can help them push their practice in new ways. They're questioning what the future holds with AI the way that the broadest possible audiences are, right? But we are here next to these companies, next to these humans who are making this happen, and we have had some incredibly interesting conversations with these humans who are also grappling with what this future holds, right? So we've been able to begin to put some artists in touch with them and see what kind of bilateral conversations happen. This is a very university art museum model, by the way, of like inter-informing things. Tom has an extraordinary chair of his modern and contemporary, Claudia Schmuckli, who I think curated like one of the most important exhibitions that has happened to date, Uncanny Valley in 2020. And she and I have begun to have some interesting conversations about what is the responsibility of being an arts institution here in this city next to the humans who are creating this next iteration of AI, and what can we offer artists? How can we help artists help us grapple with the impact on technology? So I feel that it's really important for us to really begin to understand how being here in San Francisco as arts institutions, working with artists who are both interested and rightly very nervous, as we are both interested and rightly very nervous, must kind of go headfirst into understanding this. So more to come on that.
Yeah, right. I remember seeing that Uncanny Valley.
Yeah, it's an incredible show.
Yeah.
So, there are like the right, really interested arts institutions here, the technologists here. You can really start to do some very important interdisciplinary thinking in this space. Of course, I think to Ned's point, to Tom's point, these are also really going to be important potential funders of arts and culture in this city, because there's real economic impact to be had in the future here. These are also companies that I do think can be very interested in that if conversations are had in the right way.
So have any of you talked to artists about how this is going to change their perception of art and how they're making art?
So I've got two thoughts about AI. On one hand, not just artists, also art historians and museum users. Museums have spent the last 25, 30 years transferring analog data into data sets, into online. Digitizing our archives. But all of this information is in silos. We have a collection database. The Asian Art Museum has a collection database. Around the world, there are all these silos of a huge amount of information. And I'm very excited about AI as something that can kind of now dip into these databases and can, it's happening. Siri is a thing of the past almost. You can already, with ChatGPT, have a conversation in whatever voice you choose, and ChatGPT is pretty intelligent, has a lot of information, whatever information level you are starting from. So within the next couple of years, museums are all going to benefit from this ever-expanding knowledge base that AI taps into. That's incredibly exciting. But at the same time, I'm worried that we're already addicted to our mobile devices. I mean, how many of you at night, before you go to sleep, you should be picking up that book, but in fact you're scrolling through Instagram, emails, we all try not to do it, but it happens. And I'm worried that with AI, we're going to get even more kind of addicted. We become part of this economy of information. We're the digits in their projections. And the reason I'm in a suit this morning is I was over at the Legion with the Belgian Economic Commission. And as part of the program for them, we had a slow looking exercise. And we sat in front of one painting for 20 minutes and kind of meditated on it. And it was such a pure joy just to be quietly looking at this painting and being reminded, the world doesn't depend on being tapped into these things. And ironically, the painting was Rubens's The Tribute Money, where the elders give Christ a coin with the picture of Caesar on it, and they say, what should you do with this? And Christ says, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's. And I was thinking, we are that coin. We are the clicks that these big industries depend on. And while that's all fantastic, we have to find ways of separating ourselves, stepping back, staying in touch with the earth. And it's in places like this, like Grace Cathedral, or in museums, that we still have that rare opportunity to connect with other people and with objects, and not to be part of that digital flow.
I totally agree with that. One of the most interesting things that is happening with me, with artists and AI these days, are the artists who are not working in technology at all, are working in ceramics. I have an earthworks, a landscape artist, and these are artists who are like really interested in sort of the humanism of their craft, frankly, but have some element of something that a ceramicist who would like to make these ceramic oyster beds, frankly, open and close in accordance with the tide clock. And she wants a robotics expert, and it's an AI project to some extent. But she's really grappling with like the humanistic element of AI. And so we've paired her with the head of robotics at OpenAI, who's also, and there's a sort of a humanism to it. And when you come and see that project, it will be an in real life project. It won't be a digital. So I hear what you're saying, and I'm concerned about the same thing. And I don't know the answer, but I'm having fun with artists who are grappling with it as well. And in a funny way, as we talk to technologists, I find that even they, to some odd extent, are grappling with it too.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. When cell phones, we used to call them smartphones. So when we first started having smartphones, I was actually spending a lot of time in prisons visiting inmates. And I just remember being in a conversation, the prisoner I was visiting was writing an opera and learning Latin. And, I met all sorts of people in prison, but, I was talking to him. I said, you might be the last person in America who can really focus and pay attention to things. Because he was not allowed to ever have a computer or, and you're right, these just in the same way that we've been changed through the internet and our cell phones, our consciousness of what we fill our minds with, how we are as human beings is changing too.
Exactly.
And museums are like the last place to come and have an in real life.
Yeah, I'm gonna,
or this is
And
actually, and this.
yeah.
So I have a 21-year-old daughter who is an artist. She's finishing college, who's never used AI for either, she says, hasn't yet used AI significantly for any of her assignments, and certainly not in her art, and is very dismissive of it. And I say to her, I'm an ignoramus when it comes to AI. I'm not on the cutting edge of it. But I said, Audrey, this is the next frontier. You have to at least know what it is and experiment with it as an artist to be able to, educate those around you, or to say, actually, it's no good, right? Or, in fact, oh my God, this has this potential. But I think, AI has already, those of you here who are in the sciences and others know this already, it's made incredible, mind-blowing contributions, and it's already gone way out there that most of us can't even imagine in the field of biology, biotech, medicine. With the arts, I think it's, there have been as you've pointed at, other kinds of technologies or new inventions, whether it's medium or technology, that have changed how we define art already over the course of many centuries.
Like photography.
And including, photography, exactly, which was not considered
Lithographic
art.
printing, yeah.
Yes.
Moving image.
Even working
Yeah,
with clay,
film.
ceramics. So I think it's a question. Sometimes I feel like the arts and culture world is jumping on the bandwagon of AI, in part because it's just so much that seems to be happening. To what extent it can actually help creativity, that's the question, right? I think we should, all artists, if they're open to it, should experiment with it. But how is it changing our notion of what art is? And how is it encouraging more people to become creative? So if it's doing those things and not just being inserted into an already known medium, so for example, like photography, where you've got AI created things, it's just not that interesting. And I think the role of museums is actually to be able to say, it's not that interesting. Or that is
most of it's not that interesting.
Most of it is not. But then be also open, because there are artists and other creatives who are willing to experiment and do things in ways that shatter our notions of what we hold dear, and be willing to allow for that experimentation to happen, but at the same time be able to say, that's not that interesting if it isn't. So that the real interesting stuff can surface.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much.
Well
when when Ed was talking about AI and just the amount of money that's involved and what it means for our city, I did think a lot about this old thing I hear. I've heard this for so many years, that that generation of donors that are dying away. They've carried us as art institutions in the city for so many years, and there doesn't seem to be anyone in the next generation to fill their shoes. And I wonder if you can just kind of comment on that like story that we hear so often. Is it true? What do we do in terms of how do we fund these important institutions that we care so much about?
Well, growing up in San Francisco, I would always hear about the same 5 or 7 families that had come together to do
fix something,
everything, whether it's buying the baseball team or saving the museum or building the new building. These families put the city on their shoulders when it was needed. And there are lots of different ways we might look at this, but in the role that I'm in today, I say, it's not obvious to me that the city has done a good job with the business community over the last generation and helping people feel like this is a place that they ought to stay, invest in, feel like they have more than a transactional relationship with. And that can come from so many different things. It can come from having a tax called the overpaid executive tax, which is just poking a finger in the eye of the decision maker at the company and the person who we would hope would want to be supporting local institutions. It can come from...
I'd like to be taxed like that. I'm just kidding. I shouldn't have interrupted you.
There are lots of people who feel like it's a privilege to pay taxes. That one actually is when you make the company pay more because of the individual.
Yeah.
And in my old job, when I would sign the company's tax forms and the person would say, "This is for your salary," it didn't feel great.
Yeah.
And for people who didn't grow up here, who didn't benefit from all these institutions, who don't feel like they want to be here forever, that might be one of those moments, or it might be one when the city comes after you for something else at your company, when you say, you know what, I'll give my money, or I'll take my family, or I'll move my company somewhere else. And I certainly don't mean to let folks off the hook when I say it this way, but I don't think that the city, all of us, the government, the leaders, have done a good job of helping people feel like this is a place where there's going to be where we're going to celebrate their participation in a consistent way where they've been able to count on it. Yeah. And so what I hope we can all do together is celebrate everybody's success, as long as it's moral and ethical success. We might not agree with all the things, we might not use all the products, but if we can celebrate people's success in San Francisco, I think it's not too late for this generation. And many of them have signed the Giving Pledge. They're going to give their wealth away somewhere eventually. And then we can start making the case that there are really important opportunities that we hope that they will invest in San Francisco. Anecdotally, there are 2 funds that the city has been working hard to help stand up. One is called Breaking the Cycle, which is for shelter beds. And the other is the Downtown Development Corp, which is to revitalize downtown. both have raised well over $40 million in a pretty short period of time, and that's, in the grand scheme of things, a drop in the bucket. But it's coming not just from the families who did this for the last generation, but from people who believe in what's happening right now in our city, who want to support the mayor, who want to support San Francisco. And I'm hopeful that through celebrating their participation, through listening to them, that we can bring them into the fold, and that some will care about the Asian, some will care about the DeYoung, others will care about the opera, others will care about schools, and some will be able to care about all of them, but that we can bring them in, that it isn't too late.
So I have thought for some time now that the nonprofit model in this country is not sustainable, of which museums are a part. It made sense, I think, back in the day when institutions were smaller and when the generation of philanthropists it was about civic duty, and you gave to sustain a lifetime commitment to an institution because you believed in the arts, or you believed in the city or the town that you lived in, right? So institutions created endowments, which are forever pots of money to ensure that institutions lasted forever. Nowadays, that it's just simply not a model that I don't see how it's really sustainable. So it's a conundrum for me personally, and for us, I think. And you're perhaps more optimistic about that generational divide. It's I don't know that it's anything to fault for. It's simply a difference in how generations think. And I think with this city, the young, particularly those in the tech fields and finances, it's simply how their practice has changed, right? So you ask for them to give $5 million to invest in an endowment that's going to last forever, but they don't see it. Whereas their practice of business is seed money, prove something, more money, invest and prove something. That's actually, in many ways, healthy particularly for business. It just doesn't work as well with nonprofits. But it's actually, I think, an interesting model for us in the museums who we're not always asked to prove. And I think it's actually a good thing where we're pushed to be a little bit more entrepreneurial, to invent things, to think outside the box, to stretch a little, and to prove ourselves. And so that we're constantly kind of on our feet and doing things. But if those two models could somehow meld somewhere, that would be the way that museums can be sustainable. And I would love it if, as part of our collective education or just training of the next generation, to allow them to embrace and to even just have this awareness that you are part of a civic society, and the investment in the structures of that society, museums, the cathedral, things that are not only about business, changes not only your life, your children's life, your grandchildren's life, and it's about that long-term sustainability, right? Because young people don't think about that, and nor should they necessarily. That's a privilege of youth. But as you evolve as a human being and into an adult, that if that could become part of the mindset and part of the culture, right? That each one of us has some sort of responsibility that will in fact bring multiplied joys, and that you're sustaining a society. It's not just about you, it's just not about the money that the business makes, it's that collective investment in the society and the arts.
And you're so right. I mean, there's ways which, as a young person, I think when you get older, you do realize that you cannot take these things for granted. Like things that you thought that would be there forever.
Right.
We have a church seminary in Berkeley, and it no longer exists. It's gone. And I don't think anybody in 1985 would have imagined that would be the case. But I would love to hear from the two of you about the same question about donors and that donor mythology that I just described. Is it true, or what does it mean?
I mean, I think it's an incredibly difficult landscape, and I think it is true that the Bay Area has been, the arts in the Bay Area have traditionally been sustained, and the city has been sustained by just extraordinary families. That is completely true. And I think I said this at the beginning, that even with founding the ICA, I took very seriously this idea that the ICA was built by some longtime supporters of the arts in the Bay Area, and then a handful and many sort of first-time givers who were not giving enormous dollars, certainly not $5 million gifts, but we really did have this privilege of being a startup museum and using this kind of language of startup and functioning not like a traditional museum, because I agree completely with Soyoung. After 25 years of working in bigger nonprofits, the model doesn't work. It's incredibly hard, and our jobs as leaders of institutions are big and impossible, and we need to spend an enormous amount of time cultivating fundraising. So I had this challenging but very different opportunity to sort of raise as I went, with a lot of kind of seed funding, invest in this idea, we can be nimble, we're trying this, and was able to attract, there's a sort of lore that ICA San Francisco has attracted a lot of tech donors. I'm not sure we have more than the other institutions, but we have been sort of an institution that was attracting a lot of kind of first-time givers or earlier givers to the arts, because there is this kind of build with us mentality. And I will also say there is this language of investing in the ICA, investing in contemporary art, is investing in the revitalization of the city, because that's so much what we are trying to do. And I think that's something that this generation of supporters is interested in. I think that feels important. And the other thing I think is important to say is that there is no kind of monolithic tech supporter, right? These are individual humans who get excited about things that are exciting to them, and it depends upon the story that you're telling, the activity that you're doing. It's a hard landscape. We have a very different budget model, and a freedom to be very risky. It's different for us.
How about you, Tom? You probably have, of all of us sitting on this stage, you probably have the most experience with just this exact question.
I think I'm probably more, it's a tough environment at the moment, but I think I'm quite optimistic. The big difference perhaps between New York, I found, between New York and San Francisco, was that in New York there is this very, very well-developed patronage philanthropy model. And anybody, New York consists of so many people who've come to New York to make it, to be successful. And if you're successful in New York, it is expected that you will join a board, that you will support an institution, whether it's a sports team or a cultural institution. There's this kind of centrifugal force that brings people together in support of New York and all of its glories. I found when I came to San Francisco, yes, absolutely, part of that model was here. There are those families, multi-generational families and new families, very supportive of all sorts of different aspects of the city. But at the same time, there was this kind of parallel track, all this technology, venture capital world that wasn't kind of getting mixed into it. Now, I feel very optimistic that I think that for various reasons, we're now beginning to make advances. Part of that is the new administration. I think the mayor, Ned, you worked with some of these people. You are actively engaging them, making them realize they have a responsibility to be supporting the community in which their staff are living and working. One big challenge we face is that the older generation who did so well in the tech industry are not necessarily good role models in this respect. There are philanthropists among them, Bill Gates, who have been extraordinary in their generosity, but not to the arts. Bill Gates actually back in 2011 said, he went on a world tour talking about philanthropy, and he said it was morally wrong to give money to a cultural institution if you could save a child from going blind. That is a false statement, because one, there's money for both,
Right,
And
false
two,
dichotomy.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
and blindness is not just physical. Blindness is also cultural. In fact, the biggest problems we face in the world today, many of them come from a lack of understanding of others. And I think that one of the things cultural institutions does is to help people understand others. Back to empathy, I mentioned earlier. So I think that, it's on us to prove to this new generation of potential philanthropists why we are so important, what we do within a community, how we serve the community. And just to finish, I do feel optimistic because in recent years, we have seen some of these tech companies and some of these individuals really stepping up in a big way. Google was a very big supporter of our Kahinda Wiley exhibition. They're now a big supporter of the Ruth Osawa show at SF MoMA. Jensen Huang of NVIDIA has come forward with this huge financial support of the CCA. And I hope that these big examples are going to also sort of start having a ripple down effect. But as I said, I'm optimistic that we have a city administration that is now very actively reaching out, making these contacts, generating these discussions. So it's not easy going, but I do think there's a lot to play for and a lot of upside to come.
Oh, yeah.
One of the traditions we have here at the forum is we take questions from our audience. I already saw Curtis. He's like raring for a question. I know a few of you others also may have questions. Rebecca Nessel has note cards for you to write down, so she'll distribute those right now. I wonder if each of you tell me about an artist or a piece of art that you're especially excited right now about, something that you might kind of expose the rest of us to. I'll start. Jared Johnson is our new canon for music at the Cathedral. He's just started a girls' choir. There's 19 voices in the girls' choir. There's 53 boys singing the boys' part of the choir, another 12, 15 men singing in it. Choral music at Grace Cathedral, it just knocks your socks off. I mean, once you hear it, you'll never be quite the same again. So that's one of the things I'm noticing. Oh, thanks.
I'd urge everybody to go and see. We've got a Manet Morisot show about the relationship between Edouard Manet and Bette Morisot, opening at the Legion in 2 weeks' time. And it sort of flips the script. This is not just the case of a woman artist learning from a male artist. It's a much more rich, interesting relationship with influence going both ways. And at the De Young, we have an exhibition about Japanese manga. And if any of you are thinking, what's manga? It is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And if you don't know about it, your kids and your grandkids probably do. And manga is taking over the world. So this is the first exhibition about manga in America. So if you want to learn about it, go to the De Young.
I'm going to do two. We have our Masako Miki show at ICA San Francisco, which is an example of a transformation of our really crazy bank building space. Masako Miki is a Bay Area artist, does these extraordinary felt sculptures, but the show has totally transformed a downstairs basement of an old bank building into a totally theatrical experience of walking into one of her night parade paintings. So go over to ICA and see that. And then we have an upcoming, soon to be announced, but I'm announcing it now, project with an extraordinary artist, Lily Kwong, who is this landscape artist that I was mentioning. And Lily Kwong got a seed funding from the Spain grant, and she is going to be 3D printing seed-impregnated dirt into a sort of massive architectural scale experience that will bloom over the course of the spring and summer. And she just did an incredible project in New York at Madison Square Park, and she's just an amazing, she's from the Bay Area, but this will be her first ever Bay Area project at a soon-to-be-announced public space in downtown San Francisco. So I'm excited about that project.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm watching Masako Miki too. We've got something cooking up that our contemporary curators are working on. So I'm, obviously as a newcomer, I'm learning more and more about Bay Area artists, and that's one of the privileges and one of the joys of my work here. this month, on the 24th, we're opening an exhibition titled Rave into the Future. And it's a really exciting direction for us, a little bit experimental, with West Asian diaspora artists, many of whom are actually based here in this country, some in Europe. And we're talking West Asia, a region that is more often referred to as Middle East, perhaps. So kind of pushing the boundaries on how we define Asia and contemporary art. These are mostly video or installation-based visual artists, but deeply ingrained in their practice is also the idea of creating joy and community through dance. So within a visual exhibition space, we're actually having dance floors and inviting both the artists themselves and DJs and the audience to come and boogie with us. So I hope you'll all come and join us.
So Ned, you're a very popular man among our people. So
I wonder how many of them are about arts and culture.
Yeah, they're all. They've got a lot of questions for you. So we're going to move into kind of like the speed round. So it may
I love
Ned,
the
speed
hearts.
round.
I just want to say quickly, for 20 years, these beautiful heart sculptures
Yeah,
are
right.
all
That's what I was
around
going to
San
ask you.
Francisco.
Yeah.
I think about the Monkey King, the opera that opens in November. I think about those incredible McCartney photos that we saw this summer. But these hearts are so quintessentially San Francisco, and they're painted by, many of them are painted by local artists. We own one painted by a young woman who graduated from Lowell, and they're a way both to support the San Francisco General, and they say San Francisco when you look at them. And we just had one installed in Union Square. That's a California poppy, but when you find them all over the city, and it's a sign of civic pride, and it's also a sign of philanthropy. You just bring it back to what you're talking about. I hope we see them in everybody's front yards.
Sounds great. All right, so here are some questions for Ned. Can the increase in conventions help in some way to support art in San Francisco, either donation or recognition?
Yes. So first of all, from a tourism perspective, I think about conventions as the very top of funnel. Somebody comes here because they have to for work. They're assigned to come to this convention. And our convention center hotel bookings tied to conventions are up 60% year over year. So that's a lot more people who'll be coming here because they're told to come here for work. They come, they have an incredible experience. They notice that whatever they saw on Fox News, crime's down 40% year over year in Square, 30% year over year across the city. They go home, they tell their family comes back for spring break, their family goes back to school or their other institutions after spring break, and you have this trickle-down effect across tourism. That leads people both to come to our incredible arts and culture institutions, because where do people host evening events when they go to Moscone during the day? The Asian's going to host something during the Super Bowl. There's going to be something at the Young during the Super Bowl. I'm sure the ICA will have it as well. They use our incredible institutions in the evenings, and they also go visit them, and then their families come see them when they come back. So a hard yes that those conventions are, they are the top of funnel for our entire city.
I love that. And I think this is more of a question for you, Soyoung, but for all of us. What is the new model for the nonprofit if the current one is broken? Question mark. Philanthropy seems to be turning into an, quote, an investment strategy requiring a return on investment. How do you convince these investors that the return is social?
It's a really great question. I think I'm hoping it's the merging of the old model and the new model. There's no getting around the fact that we're in a new era and that there is this new model. So I think it's partly that the institutions just have to be more nimble and respond to that and perform in ways that are not about sort of being self-satisfied or just taking it for granted that you'll actually live forever. Some things maybe die because they shouldn't be around forever. And so if you kind of need to prove that you are part of the fabric of the city, the country's life, right? That your institution matters, that it brings, and it's part of a bigger network that brings soul to the city and that changes people's lives as human beings, as you said, with empathy. So it's partly changing how we operate, I think, to be responsive to those who are serious about asking us to be innovative, to be inventive, and to keep funding us, even if it isn't a forever model. And then I think at the same time, I do think actually if people are trained or people are open to the idea of civic duty, of civic responsibility, and of being part of this larger society where, again, art is the soul, that we can perhaps train a whole generation that will come to understand that their contribution to the arts can be a forever thing. So I'm thinking those two things too.
You sound
to
like
meld.
a closet optimist. Come on out.
I'm a realist.
Well, I was going to say, like, ICA has this
Hopeful.
extreme opportunity to model the new model because we have this ability to, like, partner with a real estate company and take this space and activate it and partner over here and take this. And so we talk a lot about having this freedom to, like, be entrepreneurial and pioneer new models that obviously don't translate to other larger institutions, but we can maybe begin to set up.
But I think it can translate.
I think it can
you're
translate.
You're helping to show
We
how
talk
we can.
a lot
yeah.
about how do we
Right.
be this sort of like set the stage
Yeah.
and offer new models that let's figure out how they translate to bigger and larger institutions. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There are many small and medium-sized organizations that may not have national presence or draw tourists, but that part of the ecosystem is essential. What's the city's role in supporting these tiers of work, which represent thousands of San Franciscans?
So we make tens of millions of dollars a year of grants to artists and institutions of all sizes through today what is two city departments, grants for the arts and the Arts Commission. We announced a few months ago that we're going to bring those two together along with the Film Commission to be one newly named arts department. And we're midstream on that. We'll have some public involvement in it over the coming months. But the idea is just to do what we're doing better, to have two departments making grants as opposed to one isn't immediately intuitive. We want to continue to do and just do more of what they both do. So we need to keep doing that. We need to do it even better than we have in the past. Right now, there are tens of institutions that get $10,000 a year. I don't know if that's the right answer or if the right answer is you graduate or you go out and somebody else gets the opportunity to get 10,000. I don't want to make that decision, but I want to lead us through making good decisions about what that grant making looks like because the smaller institutions are so important in so many ways to our city.
Great. The Asian Art Museum is closed Tuesday and Wednesday because the city has cut funding for security. That seems like an opportunity since future supporters through school programs of all types. Can't art experience be more important to the city than bike lanes? How can we correct this?
That sounds like a false dichotomy too.
False dilemma.
So when we showed up in January, there was an $800 million two-year budget crisis. Things for the city, a $16 billion budget, looking $800 million over the course of 2 years, and we are required to have a balanced budget. A ton of really hard decisions had to be made. When Tom explained to me, for example, we can cut that role, but then we'll have to close our cafe, and then we don't get the revenue from the cafe. The decisions that fall out of cutting that much that quickly are really painful, and they affect the arts, they affect the bike lanes, they affect so many things that are important to all of us. One, we need to get our fiscal house in order. Two, we need to grow the pie. A city that has a shrinking population is dying. And over the last 5 years, our population has shrunk. If we can build more housing, if we can make it easier for people to do all the things they should be doing in our city, our population will grow. And if our population grows, we should have more money to spend on more things without taxing people in ways that are differently than we do today. We should just be able to grow the pie. And if we do that, and if Soyoung keeps doing all the amazing things that she's doing, I hope that we'll see the museums open all of the days. I hope we'll see them full all of the days with people from here, from neighboring counties, and from across the world who've been reluctant to come here because of the fake news that they've been hearing about, or the things that were true that I think we're on our way to addressing.
Yeah, great.
I just want to say the city supports a third of the Asian Art Museum's operating budget, so that's a little over 10 million, which in the giant bucket of the city budget, of course, we all say, that's such a tiny amount, couldn't you increase it by just a little? But of course, there are how many departments, institutions that are saying the exact same thing to you?
58.
To the mayor. So from the Asian Art Museum's perspective, yes, absolutely. Could the city support us more? Yes. And it was our previous administrations where that cut has been made. I will just say though, school tours, that is one of the things that we have been known for. And we are currently actually, even on the days that we're closed, experimenting with it, still bringing in the kids and the school tours. And I do believe, actually, that that's where the future is. It's investment in the future. It's when you start at a young age, through school tours, they go and tell their parents. I'm actually now, someone from the city gave me the brilliant idea, why don't we invite in all of the PTAs? Because of course it's the parents who bring the kids in as well. So through the school tours, regardless of whether it's the days that we're closed or not, is the investment in the future that we're
definitely.
making.
And you get children in the habit of knowing that
Exactly.
museums are a place they
Yes.
can go, then
Yes.
it becomes part of their
And I
life
would say,
later.
especially for communities and kids where that's not an obvious thing,
Yeah,
right? You
yeah,
don't get that
exactly.
from the family background. That changes not only the individual's lives, but that will change the city's culture.
Yeah, so true. Great to hear you all agree that arts and culture are essential for our soul and revitalization. We need affordable artist live-work spaces downtown, like the theater around for years, and many bonds past the Ruth Asawa School, or the arts is still not at 135 Van Ness. What can you do, Ned, as art ed?
Solve all the
Art
problems.
education is critical. Sorry, we're running out of time too. Sorry.
So I'll give you just two sentences. The way we fund affordable housing for all professions right now, it's not sufficient. It's not working because of the structure that it comes from people building buildings. If people aren't building buildings of it, then we're not building affordable housing. We're not funding affordable housing. I don't have the right answer, but I can tell you we spent a lot of time thinking about it, and once the family zoning map makes its way through the Board of Supervisors, we have to turn to how we fund affordable housing for all professions.
Yeah. I'm so grateful. I mean, the time just passes like in an instant. But I've talked to each one of you in different places, and having you all here in one place and all a part of one dialogue, one conversation has been extraordinary. I'm just like going to be thinking about these ideas for a long time. So thank you for making your time. And I know that all of us are so grateful that you took time on the most beautiful day of the year to be here in this cathedral and talking to us about what you love. So thank you very much. Please join me next week when my guest will be Laurel Mathewson. We'll be talking about her book, An Intimate Good, A Skeptical Christian Mystic, in conversation with Teresa Avila. We rely on your support for the forum. Gifts of any size make a difference. There are many ways to give, including texting the word THINK, T-H-I-N-K, to 76278. Thanks so much, Tom, Soyoung, Ned, Ali. We're so grateful to see you.
Thank you.